Get paid to drive. Start a new career behind the wheel at the EMTA. If you are looking for a high-paying and rewarding career with full benefits and paid training, stop by or apply online today with the EMTA. Plus, EMTA riders can now enjoy free Wi-Fi on new, clean, and environmentally friendly buses to travel all over Erie County. Visit ridethee.com for more information.
Get on board EMTA. Get on board EMTA. Get
At Quickfill, what matters most is that our customers, our communities, and our heroes are taken care of. We start by providing American-made gasoline, which means you can buy local, keeping America and your communities strong. We also support vital charities every year and hold Operation Give Thanks each November to help provide a better future for our veterans and their families. We're proud to support the communities we live and work in, and we're doing our best every day to make our towns a better place. Quickfill, driving America.
Welcome to TalkErie.com's Joel Natale Show, Erie, Pennsylvania's daily podcast. Every day, we tackle the biggest issues that the Erie PA region faces. Stay informed and involved as we advance the narrative of Erie. Now, here's Joel Natale.
I'm excited to have this one here because we're talking about leadership. Dr. Andrew Roth, he's the scholar in residence at the Jefferson Educational Society. And we're talking about his brand new book, How to Be a Highly Effective Leader, a primer. Good to see. Can I call you Andrew, Andy?
No, doctor, please.
Okay, you got it. Welcome.
I'm glad to be here.
All right, we're a family show. We like to hear origin stories. How did you come up?
I grew up in Canton, Ohio. I actually went to college in Cleveland, and then in 1970, I joined the faculty. I've gone all the way in my career in higher education from Wunderkind to Old Fogey. I joined the faculty at Gannon in the Gannon College, English department in 1970, and here we are 56 years later.
So were you an English professor when I was there in the 80s?
No.
Okay.
I was at Mercyhurst. I started my career in Erie in the then Gannon College English department. I had a wonderful boss, John Rao. He was a great leader. We'll talk about that later, maybe make a comment. And then in the mid-'70s, about 1974, 75, I moved to Mercyhurst, and I spent a long time at Mercyhurst. And then about 25 years ago, I left Mercyhurst, and I was the president of a college in Cleveland. Then I was a president at St. Bonaventure University. And then my wife, Judy Owens Roth, who's a native Erieite, for extended family reasons, we retired to Erie.
That is our joy to have you guys here. Talk about. Can I go off topic for a second here?
Go anywhere you want to go.
You're president of the St. Bonaventure, the Bonnies. Again, tremendous, Catholic tradition. But higher ed right now is in a pickle, isn't it? What are your thoughts?
Wow.
When we talk about the population, the demographic cliff, and private schools like the.
That is an incredibly interesting question, at least to me.
Yeah.
Given what I spent my life doing, I suspect it's interesting to some of, if not a lot of your leaders. Higher ed is in an interesting, the old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. It's at an interesting moment in its history. And you're absolutely correct, particularly in the North and the Middle Atlantic states. There are more private colleges in New York, Ohio, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania. To a certain extent, it goes as far as Illinois. It's really small private colleges, north and south. There are more small private colleges in the south than people up here might be aware of. But small private colleges are really a phenomena of the 19th and early 20th century, and they essentially end in terms of any large numbers of them at the Mississippi River. And so what makes that relevant now is particularly in New England and the upper Midwest, and it's always been interesting to me where Erie lands. Is this a Midwestern city or is it at the end of the East? Mideastern city never made any sense to me.
Right.
And temperamentally, I think it's more Midwestern than it is Eastern.
I think the Alleghenies really make a distinction there.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
You cross the Alleghenies, even in the state of Pennsylvania, you cross the Alleghenies, everything changes, including the topography and the architecture. We won't even get into culture.
Right.
So I think that's a good observation. In any event, because there's so many of these, there's a double whammy. In those states, the system, one could argue, is overbuilt. That probably just rankled some feathers of some of my former higher ed colleagues.
Yeah.
The system is, you could argue, I've got mixed opinions about it, but you could argue that the system is overbuilt. And what makes that particularly troublesome, actually dangerous for the welfare of a lot of these schools, not only the privates, some public branches, as we've discovered
with Pashy,
within our own backyard.
Yep.
The demographic cliff, as they call it, I think it's probably better described not so much as a cliff that you go off all of a sudden. It's actually a downward sloping line, but it's a fairly steep negative curve. The birth rate drops. And without getting into the real statistical details, because I could have prepared for that, but let's follow it anyways.
Yeah.
With the financial crisis of 2008, interesting thing happened. People stopped having babies, or they didn't have babies at the same rate.
Which is remarkable, Andy, because it was 2008 and 2009 when we had the peak of college engagement.
It's sometimes called the baby boom echo effect. The baby boomers' children started to have babies. And you had so if you go backwards from 2008, you go to the late 80s, early 90s, the baby boomers' children start to get married, they start to have families, and so you had that rising tide. Well, after the financial crisis of 08, 09, two things happened. People got married later and also fewer and fewer children. So without getting too deep into that, now here we are, 18 years later, there is, interestingly enough, a shortage of 18-year-olds. And you can't just go make more 18-year-olds. It takes 18 to 20 years to make an 18, 19,
it's like
or 20
growing
years.
A Christmas tree.
Yeah. It's not so. Higher ed and the percentage, and I'm going to use a number, and I'm going to preview it by saying I'm not absolutely wedded to this number, because actually, as we said, I didn't really come to talk about this today, but I'm happy to do it. The birth rate has declined in that particular segment somewhere around 4%, which means there's about 4% fewer high school graduates. That doesn't sound like a critical number, except actually it is, because many of these smaller schools, they operate on very thin margins. And so, as I was just reading, Jeff Salingo, who's a higher ed consultant, was talking about St. Michael's College in New England, which is an extremely fine liberal arts college. Its enrollment has dropped from 2,400 to 1,200, got cut in half. You're trying to project a freshman enrollment. It's one thing to project you're going to get 400 students. You get 350, you would think, well, that's not a big leap, but it is. 350 is 1/8 or 12% of your enrollment, so 12% of your revenue. You can't easily fix 12% of revenue. You can spend endowment, but you can only do that for so long. And I think in the case of St. Michael's, I was just reading, they have something on the order of $120 million endowment, but they had to spend about $20 million of it in the last 3 years just to stay afloat. So, and they're not, and I don't want to pick on St. Michael's, because I'm just quoting an article I happened by chance to have read in the last couple days.
What do you think?
But it's symptomatic.
Yeah. What do you think about, though, this whole thing of the haves are getting strong? I don't think Michigan is sweating this now.
No.
And Florida, University of Florida or whatever.
They're called, well, I don't know what they're called.
The R1s or something?
Research One University.
Yeah.
The elite university. The whole conversation about higher ed is skewed, both economically and culturally. Almost everything you read in the media is about 150 schools that if you and I wanted to do a little Delphi experiment here with a paper and pencil and spend 15 minutes, we probably could name all of them. We'd come up with them. They're the brand name schools.
Yeah.
They're the elite private schools, the Ivy League, plus University of Chicago, Northwestern, Stanford, Rice, a handful of others, Emory, Duke. And then the flagship state schools, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan.
But even Penn State is contracting a bit.
Well, Penn State's contracting their branches, not
State College.
I would say main campus, and if there was a Penn State person, particularly a Penn State senior administrator here, they'd quickly correct me that there is no main campus.
Right.
Okay, semantics.
Yes.
State College, University Park is not suffering, but the branches are, and the branches are in effect de facto small colleges, and they're feeling this pinch. And so, it's not the time to be the president of a small underfunded college.
Wow. How are the Bonnies doing, do you know?
They're doing extremely well, and Jeff Gingrich, the president there, is doing an excellent job. And the fellow who succeeded me, unfortunately, died during COVID.
Oh,
he did a fabulous job, Dennis DePiro. So the Bonnies are doing well.
Okay.
But it's a constant struggle, and they keep working at it all the time, because that's all you can do is keep working at it all the time.
Do you think that higher ed resets in the next 5 years? Is there contraction some more? I mean, we just heard about Hampshire College is closing this year.
Somewhere on the average of 50 to 60 colleges are closing a year. Now, there's 4,000 colleges in the United States, so there's a lot of different things under the label college besides what someone might we say the word, they immediately think of, I don't know, Allegheny Teal.
Right.
So there are a lot of others, a lot more fragile institutions. So when people say 60 colleges a year, probably your average well-informed citizen will not have heard of 50 of them.
Mm-hmm.
But 10 of them, which is 16 to 20%, they'll have heard of. And with this prediction that 60 colleges a year are going to close over the next 5 to 10 years, that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
So it's a real challenge.
It's kind of a double whammy, because meanwhile, even as you had peak college in 2009, what we're experiencing in 2025, 2026 is this pendulum swing against 4-year degrees to, you got to go into trades or take a gap year and all these. So it's really at the wrong time. Meanwhile, you can't beat a 4-year degree for, earning capacity and actually lifelong learning, if you ask me, using that gift that God gives you, Yeah.
Well, I agree with you on all those counts. But what's happening besides the demographics is there has been a loss of confidence in colleges, some of which is perhaps earned, and much of which may not be. There's also what you've just described in the economic value. Well, someone holding at least a bachelor's degree, and I want to be careful about quoting a statistic here because I'm working from memory, but I believe the benefit still, the average college graduate, which averages are tricky.
Right. Yeah.
The average college graduate over the course of a lifetime earns something around $1.5 million more than the average high school graduate.
Wow.
And that gap used to be larger. So one of the interesting phenomena is that gap is shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a simple fact of economics or statistic. It's because the denominator in that equation, the number of college graduates, grows.
Yeah.
So, but it's what you're talking about is true. I mean, if you graduate from a quote-unquote elite institution with a reasonable record, you will do well in life.
Yeah.
If you graduate from some of the non-elite institutions with perhaps a borderline record, the guarantee is considerably weaker.
Yeah. Let me ask you one more question.
I think on balance, though, you can't make a mistake going to college.
Yeah, right.
When I say that, let me just finish that if you would.
Sure.
I'm not sure, and this is the fact that I will even say what I'm about to say will speak to the challenge colleges now have. Colleges made their value that you would earn more. That statement might still be generally true, but it's not as true as it once was. And people are smart. They begin to see that. And as a result, if one's only reason to go to college is because you think there's an economic payday, it's not absolutely certain for all potential college students across all cohorts that that's the smart move. If it's only economics. I know of a young man who went to a local institution, and this is anecdotal, so therefore who knows if it's statistically valid, but he made a decision that he was going to be an electrician, which from a purely economic point of view, I thought was a very smart decision.
Yeah, yeah. One last question before I go to my break. You deal with young people. Again, you've been dealing with young people your entire career. Is there something about this current cohort, because of just cultural impact, that is affecting the grit and the determination to get through, a 4-year degree or to grind out something? Could that be an impact?
Well, my experience with younger people, one of the reasons I stay involved with the Jefferson, one of the reasons I stay involved with the Civic Leadership Academy is you learn a lot from younger people. If I hang around people my own age, I just hear stuff well, that's not entirely true, but, Yeah,
you hear a lot about aches and pains.
With all due respect to all of my good friends, yes, including the guys I'll be having lunch with tomorrow, they know what I'm saying about. Right. But when you hang out with younger people, I always joke, for example, that when I go anywhere, anytime I travel with Ben and Furky, you'll know who they are. Yeah. I learned 5 new things you can do on an iPhone. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So, I like being around younger people because they keep you alive. And I think the younger generation, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, are sometimes mischaracterized. They are as hardworking, as determined as any generation I'm aware of. What they are, however, is more skeptical, and they are more prudent buyers. And they come out of a completely different background than you and me. I was just having a conversation with someone about this the other day. If you're 25 years old, and that's a young adult, that's not a kid.
Right.
Your whole life is different than ours. For one thing, your whole life is dominated by 9/11, the war on terror, the financial crisis, and then the Tea Party, and then the politics of polarization. And that's a whole different context than I'm a little older than you. Actually, I did the arithmetic when you told me about what you. So I'm about a half a generation older than you, but that's very different than our generations.
Very interesting.
Very, very different.
All right. Why did you write the book? What got this started?
Well, what got me started about the book is, as I say in the preface and introduction, I've been engaged in leadership positions, for over 45 years. And when I first was appointed to or promoted to a leadership position, one of the things I discovered within about 2 to 3 months was I didn't know what I was doing, which can be both a humbling experience and also the impetus for a learning experience. And so I made it a practice of mine to try to learn about leadership. So I would say, as I do in the book, I am not, nor do I claim to be a leadership scholar, but I am a student of leadership. I've been thinking about it and reading about it and doing it for a long time. The immediate impetus is, as you mentioned, I'm a scholar in residence at the Jefferson Educational Society in Erie, and I suspect most of your listeners know what that is. We call it Erie's Think Tank for Community Progress. It's probably most well known to the general public for the global summit it sponsors in the fall, in which we bring in literally world-class speakers. And as far as we know, there's no community the size of Erie in the country that has anything remotely like that happens. But in addition to that, we do a lot of continuous programming over the year. The presenters do come from out of town, but also a lot of them are local, or at least local in the sense within 50 to 100 miles. I've done a number. But one of the things we also do is we sponsor a Civic Leadership Academy, which is now in its 10th or 12th year. And the Civic Leadership Academy is aimed at young people who are in their 20s, 30s, maybe even early 40s, who aspire to become a leader, or maybe have themselves been promoted, or their company is thinking of promoting them, so they sponsor them. And what we're trying to do, and I think we're starting to have some success as we notice the number of elected officials and people around the community who are quote-unquote alumni of it, we want to introduce those people to the greater Erie region so that they understand the challenges and the promise and the potential of the region. The program begins with a trip to Harrisburg to meet the governor and the legislators. We then have every month they meet and they go to, for example, one of the months they'll meet with the mayor of Erie and the Erie staff. They'll meet with the county executive. They'll go out to the county and meet with, for example, supervisors in Northeast or Corey, and so that they get a cross section and they actually get to meet and talk with people who are leaders. Another thing we do then that came out of it, some of the early participants asked for a little bit of leadership theory.
Okay.
And so, about 10 years ago, Ferki Faradi, the president of the Jefferson, asked me if I would do a leadership talk. And that then kind of morphed into a program we call the Ramey Fellows, in which we try to do a highly condensed version of a graduate seminar, which would be normally 15 weeks. We try to do this in 4 or 5 weeks. And out of that experience came this book. I started to think about leadership more systematically and came up with my own theory of leadership. And this book really is aimed at, that's why it's called a primer. It's only 150 pages long or thereabouts. A primer has 2 definitions, as I say in the book. One, it's needed to start a primer. One of the definitions of a primer is something that you use to prepare for an action to occur. In other words, you prime a wall before you paint it. Yeah. A primer will also, though, more importantly, ignite something. And so I think a leader is someone who ignites something. Leaders are people who make things happen. But another definition of a primer is a short book on a single topic. And so this is a book aimed at young people who aspire to be leaders, to try to give them a combination of some leadership theory, but not bury them in it, but also some solid practical advice based on the experience, my descriptions of the experience of other people and my own experience.
Looking for amazing finds and incredible deals? Visit Erie City Mission Thrift today. From stylish clothes and shoes to quality furniture and home goods, you'll discover something new each time while changing lives right here in Erie. It's shopping that feels good and does good. Come see us in Erie and Girard. Erie City Mission Thrift. Thrift with a purpose.
All year round, Frontier Home Products and Design has what you need to make your home comfortable and beautiful. Relax on a new timber tech deck designed by Frontier's experts. A new fireplace from Frontier Home Products Fireplace Gallery adds warmth and serenity to any home. Beauty and versatility at Frontier Home Products and Design Center, 4213 Peachtree, East 5th, next to the Bayfront Highway.
Frontier Home Products and Design Center. Discover a new frontier.
PA contractor number PA039007.
From baggage claim to pajamas in 10 minutes. Erie International Airport. Fly with ERI.com.
Fly Erie International Airport to Charlotte on American Airlines, your nonstop gateway to the world. Also, we have Breeze Airways flying nonstop to Orlando and Tampa, Florida. A great low-cost carrier providing excellent service to the regional community. Fly Erie International for your travel needs.
Fly with ERI.com.
We are talking to Dr. Andrew Roth. He is the author of How to Be a Highly Effective Leader, a primer. And I love that you mentioned that a primer is a short book about one topic. And you really are trying to give the reader, and you were also including the members of the Civic Leadership Academy cohort, kind of like those marching orders of these are the essentials you need to know.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, leadership, as turns out, is not something that can be reduced to a checklist. Do this, this, and this, and don't do that, and that, and you'll be a leader. It's more subtle than that. But what I was trying to do was to write something that would be accessible, yet it would combine some solid leadership theory with some practical advice about how to become an effective leader. We toyed with the title "Highly Effective Leaders: How They Do What They Do," but we thought that might have been a little too clunky. But I wanted to really share with young people. As I said, the audience is younger people. It's certainly not aimed at anybody with a PhD in leadership, although they could learn something from it. And it's not necessarily aimed at someone who's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, although I'd like to think there's a couple things in there they could learn. It's really trying to distill a lot of leadership theory into practical advice. And what I've done is I've come up with my own theory of leadership, that leadership really is a function of a couple of things. I call them leaders' foundational characteristics, and then I think there's 4 cardinal principles of leadership that every effective leader understands. And we spent a lot of time in the book talking about that, and then using real, and I hope accessible, examples of people that, as we were saying during the break, one of the challenges in a lot of leadership books you might pick up is they'll tell you about great figures in history. And someone who's trying to figure out how to manage an office staff of 7 and you tell them Winston Churchill did X, they're kind of like, what's that got to do with anything?
Right.
With all due respect. It actually might turn out the advice is absolutely spot on, but they can't make the connection. But if you show them people they know or people they've heard of, so, for example, I say that the 2 foundational characteristics of leadership is that a leader has to have a vision. They have to have some idea of what they want to try to accomplish. And they actually have to also anchor that vision in the history of the organization they're trying to lead, or the group of people if it's not technically an organization. And then secondly, they have to be optimistic. Leaders are optimistic. Nobody wants to follow somebody who comes in, sits there wringing their hands, going, "Oh God, we're in trouble."
Yeah.
You do that, people start looking for the door. It's not naive or foolish optimism, but it's a spirit of, we can do this. In fact, I say that ultimately is one of the defining characteristics of leaders. Leaders are people who say, we can do this. This can be done. And my 4 cardinal principles are: 1, nothing happens until someone makes it happen. And in order to do that, which is a kind of old-fashioned notion of leadership, but I stand by it, nothing happens until someone makes it happen. And then to do that, the leader has to have a pretty good understanding of who they are. Because leadership, it turns out, at the end of the day, isn't something you do, it's something you are. You're either and if you're a leader, you can do it.
Would you? Is there an analogy? Is that analogous to having the right people on the bus? You've heard that phrase.
That's the next phrase.
Okay. All right.
As I said,
don't mean to jump the gun.
No.
Yeah.
As I said, the first principle is nothing happens until somebody makes it happen.
Okay.
And in order to do that, they have to understand themselves. I'll come back to that.
Okay.
But the second principle might be more important. No one does anything alone.
Okay.
It's all about the team. And so what it turns out that leaders do at the end of the day, and this may be for some people a discovery of the obvious, but for some other people, I've seen light bulbs go off. At the end of the day, leaders build teams. And the one thing that frequently new leaders, people newly appointed to a position, that one of the things that throws them off is they don't get those 2. Or they don't anticipate that. So let's say, for example, you're really good at coding. And now you get promoted to be the leader of the group. A lot of people think, well, I was really good at accounting, or I was really good at coding, that's why I got the job. That's true, but it's only partially true, because now you're the leader. And I quote a woman that a lot of people probably never heard of in the book, but they should have, a woman named Grace Murray Hopper. Grace Murray Hopper was the first woman promoted to admiral in the U.S. Navy, and she was one of the early pioneers of computer science. In fact, she gave the world the phrase debugging. One night in 1945, her and a colleague working on an ENIAC machine, which, a computer that it wouldn't fit in this studio. It'd be bigger than this building. It wasn't working. They took the back panel off. They literally found a moth burned across the circuit. They took the moth out. They debugged it. And that's literally where the phrase comes from. But anyways, Grace Murray Hopper had a quote that I use in the book. You manage things, you lead people. And one of the things that new leader that I was just talking about promoted to this job because they're a superb coder or they're a superb accountant or they're a superb whatever, one of the things that frequently throws them off is that's no longer the job. The job's all about people. It's all about getting those, if you're promoted to be the office supervisor, those 5 or 6 people in the office working reasonably harmoniously, going in the same direction. Or if you're now the mayor of the city of Erie, getting all of these different people in Erie in different groups, to the extent possible, moving in this. It's all about people. Leadership at the end of the day is all about people. And I make the comment in the book that there are a lot of competent managers, but not all competent managers are leaders. But I've never met a successful leader who wasn't a competent manager. So don't hear what I'm not saying. You've got to understand how to do whatever this technical job at hand is. You've got to know how to do that. But that's only a part of it, and it turns out it may not be the most important part of being a leader. The most important part of being a leader is getting people to work in harmony, getting people to move in concert. So I say the first principle is nothing happens until someone makes it happen. And in order to do that, you have to understand yourself. We can come back to that. And the second thing, which probably is even more important than that, is no one does anything alone. It's all about the team. My third principle is, I actually thought I coined this phrase once giving the talk several years ago, only to discover Harry Truman said it about 80 years ago. It's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. And then the fourth thing is a leader has to be a risk taker. They have to be open to new ideas and have the ingenuity to figure out how to adapt them. When I say a risk taker, I don't mean a bungee jumper, and I don't mean they don't go to the casino and put the mortgage on the black diamond in a roulette game. That's not what I'm talking about. But they have to be able to assess situations and to have the courage, and that's not entirely the wrong word, to take the chance.
There's so much here in these 4 pillars. I'm trying to make the bridges to some of my learning. I'm a huge Jim Collins guy, and so I'm thinking about level 5 servant leadership. Would you say that is from your pillar number 1 of understanding who you are, and your pillar number 3 of saying I don't care if I get the credit? Is that the exemplar? Is that an example of a servant leader, that level 5 leader?
I think it is. I want to be careful about using the word servant leader because that actually has a specific definition.
Okay.
But this is very similar. So, I mean, somebody listening with a PhD in leadership might want to argue about the definition of a servant leader. I understand. I get that. But I do think, Joe, you're on the right track. Really successful leader understands their job is to help their people get to be the best versions of themselves. And if they can do that, then the organization prospers. It's more complicated than that because they also have to monitor the entire organization, what's going on around them. But leadership at the end of the day, and I know when I said I was promoted, good Lord, about 46 years ago, sometime in the late 70s. And I had to learn that what I knew, and in that particular instance, it was marketing and some things like that, that's important, but that's not what's really going on here. The dynamic is getting this group of people moving in a certain direction. And the way you do that, like I said, optimism, vision, those 4 pillars, and then, we were talking earlier, I think everybody has the potential to be a leader, but I don't want to be naive about that. I think leaders have, and in leadership theory, it's called trait theory. I don't buy it entirely. But, there's the notion that leaders have certain characteristics. And the strict interpretation of this is if they don't have these traits, you'll never be a leader. Well, that's kind of true, but it's only true as far as it goes because many of those traits can be learned. Okay. I mean, one of the questions I'm asked is, can you teach leadership? And my answer to that is no, but leadership can be learned. And your job's to help my job's to help people learn. And those characteristics begin and end with 2. The characteristics are good work ethic. You have to have integrity. You have to have some imagination and vision. You have to have people skills, et cetera, et cetera. But the 2 key ones are persistence and passion. Because if you don't have persistence and you don't have passion being maybe an overstatement of enthusiasm for what you're doing, if you don't have persistence and enthusiasm, the others don't count. And every leader that I talk about in the book exemplifies that. As I said earlier, one of the people who I unfortunately never had the opportunity to know the gentleman, but I've studied him for the last year or so, is H.O. Hurt, the founder of Erie Insurance. And in one of his articles he wrote for a bulletin that used to be the company newsletter, and he wrote that himself, is he attributed his own success to stubbornness, which was his way of saying persistence. You just don't give up. And so one of the things you discover is that cliches, sometimes cliches are true. They're called cliches because maybe somebody just repeats the same trite way of saying it, but the idea inside the cliche is true. And, the cliche I have in mind here is everybody in the audience has heard it before, is winners never quit and winners never quit and quitters never win. Yeah. Well, you know what? It turns out to be true.
Mm-hmm. I'm interested in how you studied H.O. and this concept of how they use the golden rule. He saw that maybe before anybody was talking about corporate values and core values is such a big deal in corporations in the 80s and 90s, but he was doing this in the 20s and 30s.
He was doing this 100 years ago.
Yeah.
He said it in his... I shall look it up so I don't misquote him. It's chapter 9 in the book. He's my model of how to be a... He talked about, well, for one thing, in terms of sharing the credit, a salute to the employees of the Erie Insurance Exchange whose loyalty, integrity, and industry have made it all possible. What a fool I would be to take all the credit. That's a quote. That's a verbatim quote. He talked about, I was looking for the original statement here of his vision, to provide its policyholders with as near perfect protection, as near perfect service as is humanly possible, and to do so at the lowest possible cost. And the whole point was service. Now, just for the information of anybody listening, I do not work for Erie Insurance. Right. I have never worked for Erie Insurance. I came to know about H.O. Hurt in the last year and a half studying this, and I wanted to pick an example of an outstanding leader that Erie people, and particularly young people in our program, could relate to. I mean, they all know what Erie Insurance is. Mm-hmm. In fact, Erie Insurance is probably most, but they probably never, well, they may have heard of his name, but that's all, the name. And I see him as an example of what you're talking about. He figured out early, very early on, he didn't really have to figure it out, it's because who he was as a person, but he figured it out early, that if you treat people fairly and if you treat people honestly, that'll come back to you.
It's good business.
It's just good business.
Yeah.
It's just good business.
But meanwhile, you're building a better community in all of that. I think about roll forward to some of the decisions that Captain Hagen has made and in the past 20 years. Look at what he's doing on 6th Street. I mean, again, in the 70s, they didn't need to stay at 6th and French. They could have moved out to the outskirts or moved down to Avondale or Pittsburgh suburb. They chose downtown Erie. Those are strategic moves that have set the course of a community for decades.
And that's because the values begin with H.O. Hurt. I mean, he actually firmly believed that if you take care of the people will take care of you. And he believed in doing it he recognized that, I want to be careful here, but he recognized that this may be the long way around the mountain, but it will last. It's substantive. It's permanent.
Do you see that, in this, quarterly stock results? I mean, you think about where our business culture is on a macro scale right now. It's hard to find guys like H.O. anymore.
It's very hard. I
don't even think Jack Welch was
no
dealing that way, right?
Actually, I probably be controversial with some, but you could use them perhaps as poll points.
Wow.
They two different ways of looking at the world. I had a conversation with someone about the Erie philosophy, and of course, it's all predicated upon service. That's what they call it, in service, and it's predicated upon being good neighbors and valuing the community. And the point is not that they don't pay attention to their bottom line. They absolutely pay attention to their bottom line. As someone said to me, you have to make money. If you don't make money, none of this is possible.
Correct.
But making money isn't at the end of the day, the end of the story. But and actually, I'm probably not at liberty to say who said that to me. But the whole point being that you make money ethically, and then you use it to improve your community. And by improving your community, you improve your organization. And by improving your organization, you improve your community in a virtuous circle.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm talking to Andy Roth here about his book, How to Be an Highly Effective Leader. I want you to get a chance to talk about your other two kind of pillars of leadership that you've written about in the book.
Well, in the book, I tried to think of, as I said earlier, names people would recognize. And I have a couple of really, I think, important anecdotes in the book about President Lincoln and General Grant. But I was looking for names that people would recognize, but maybe not know the backstory. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I started thinking about one day are the products people buy, the companies they frequent. And I'm driving down the highway. Actually, I was on my way to Cleveland for something, and I see Love's truck stop. Actually, I was not driving to Cleveland. I was on my way to Columbus, and it was in Lodi, Ohio, and there's Love's truck stop. And at the time, I thought Love's, that's some clever marketing guy's idea of a kind of sentimental come on. Well, it turns out that's not true. Tom Love was an actual person. He and his wife, Judy Love, from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And Tom Love, after World War II, he and his wife, he was a guy who made things happen because he had self-confidence. He gives great credit to his team and staff. Well, he and his wife built a chain of gas stations in and around Oklahoma City. They had 30 or 40 gas stations throughout Oklahoma, and they were that. That's what they were. They were gas stations. Then the oil embargo hits. Price of oil goes through the roof. Gas, you couldn't get fuel. Gas stations become not exact. And he has this idea. One day he goes into a small convenience store to get something, and he goes, convenience stores don't have gas pumps.
Right.
He said, what would happen if you combined a convenience store and a gas station? Particularly if you also added a small diner. Mm-hmm. And being a man who was smart enough to know about, as he said, I didn't know anything about running restaurants, so I had to find somebody who did, and he did. And at the moment, I apologize, that person's name's escaping me, but he found a guy who understood how to run restaurants. He and his wife then merged the idea of a restaurant. You put gas pumps in front of a convenience store, and then eventually there's a diner, and bingo. So he invented, with all due respect to Sheetz, Flying J, and all of those, Tom Love invented this idea.
Wow.
And that took somebody who had the initiative to see it, somebody who was smart enough to know he didn't know everything, so he built a team, so he gives credit. And three, we talked about somebody who is willing to take a risk, not a bungee jumper, and he didn't suddenly mortgage the house and build 1,000 of these. He tried it. Oh, this works. I'm going to use an out-of-date number. There used to be a notion in management theory that people have three basic human motivations: affiliation, they want to be friends with people; 2, achievement; and 3, power. The single most important characteristic of leaders who succeed over the long haul is not actually power. It's actually they have to have an achievement orientation, and they have to be good with people. Power is not irrelevant, so don't hear what I'm not saying.
Right, yeah.
But that's not their prime mover. While most high-achieving people are people who, in these inflationary times, they probably need a bigger number. But in the old days, they're probably not people who made $1 million all at once. They're probably people who made $100,000 10 times, or maybe made $10,000 100 times. And that's the kind of guy Tom Love was. When he figured it out, though, they ran with it, and that's it. The other example is, I was saying to Joe during one of our breaks, Time magazine at the end of the 20th century had a list, I think it was the top 100 business geniuses of the 20th century, might have been the top 50. Regardless of the number on the list, there was only one woman, Estee Lauder.
Wow.
Now, most people think, and actually we just earlier had confirmation of this, most people think Estee Lauder is a brand. Somebody just came up with this.
Yep.
No, Estee Lauder was a real human being. Josephine Menzner, she grew up in Queens, New York, and her uncle was making hair dyes and women's creams at home in a home lab, and she would sell them. She would go out and go door to door, literally at the beauty salons, and sell them. Well, to make a long story short, her break came one day when I think it was Saks Fifth Avenue, bought in 1943, about $800, which is about $10,000. That'd be a big order.
Yeah.
And she discovered, and anyways, make a long story short, Estee Lauder invented the premium cosmetics industry.
Wow.
And as a number of people have commented about her, before Estee Lauder, perfume was something men bought for women. After Estee Lauder, perfume was something women bought for themselves.
Wow.
And she built that whole empire. And actually, she attributed it to her stubbornness. So back to persistence.
Here it is again.
Yeah, there it is.
I'm out of time, but this is a fascinating book. Where can folks get this?
You can get the How to Be a Highly Effective Leader currently by going to the Jefferson Education Society's website, which is www.jeserie.org, and look under publications. Or you can call the Jefferson Educational Society, and I should have that phone number at the tip of my finger here, and I don't. I do. You can call the Jefferson Educational Society at 814-459-8000.
I appreciate you taking the time here. Again, as a leader goes, so goes the organization, and really so goes the community. I appreciate it. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to The Joel Natale Show, Erie, Pennsylvania's daily podcast from TalkErie.com. Subscribe to our show on your favorite podcatcher and get involved by emailing joel@TalkErie.com.